Today, we're digging into a piece of aviation history that was a huge, blinking red light, a warning sign that, tragically, was ignored. This is a story about a single point of failure, a truly miraculous landing, and a fatal design flaw that was hiding in plain sight. You know that solid thump you hear when a plane door closes? On most planes, that's the sound of physics just doing its job. The cabin pressure actually pushes the door into its frame, creating this super tight seal that just gets stronger the higher you go. It's a really simple, elegant safety feature. But on the brand new McDonnell Douglas DC-10, the cargo door was a whole different animal. You see, it opens outwards, which meant it was actively fighting against thousands of pounds of cabin pressure. And its complex locking system had this dark hidden secret. It could fool everyone into thinking it was secure when it was actually anything. Those are the chilling words right from the cockpit voice recorder. One moment, the pilots are climbing smoothly out of Detroit, and the next, their entire world just explodes into chaos. This was American Airlines Flight 96, the flight that really should have changed everything. It was just a routine leg of a cross-country trip. 56 passengers, 11 crew members, getting ready to leave Detroit. So they're climbing through 11,750 feet when a violent thud rocks the whole aircraft. The cockpit instantly fills with dust and debris, and the pilot's first thought? We've had a mid-air collision. Back in the cabin, it was chaos. Passengers saw this thick fog fill the air, a classic sign of rapid decompression. The pressure difference between the cabin and the cargo hold below was so huge that the cabin floor just violently collapsed downwards, right into the empty space where the cargo door used to be. And that set off this catastrophic chain reaction. The collapsing floor either severed or jammed the critical control cables that ran to the tail. So the rudder was stuck. The tail-mounted engine just went silent. The elevators got sluggish and barely responded. The pilots were flying a crippled giant. Incredibly, using only the engines on the wings to steer and fighting those sluggish controls, Captain Bryce McCormick somehow managed to guide that jet back to Detroit. The landing was successful. Everyone survived. It was just an unbelievable display of airmanship. So, as the relieved passengers and crew are getting off the plane, the real mystery is just beginning. Investigators look up and see this gaping hole in the side of the fuselage. The aft cargo door had been literally ripped from the plane in midair. The question wasn't just what happened, but how on earth could it have happened? The National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, launched an investigation immediately. The cargo door that had separated was found in a field nearby. And between the door, the wreckage, and the flight recorders, it all started to tell a story of a really deeply flawed design. Officially, the NTSB pointed to the latches. They said they weren't properly closed. Okay, fine, but that's just the surface-level answer. The deeper and frankly more disturbing question was why could a state-of-the-art jetliner even take off with its cargo door basically unlocked? See, unlike a normal plug-type door that's held shut by pressure, the DC-10's cargo door opened outward. This meant that at altitude, thousands of pounds of force were constantly trying to blow it open, just like a champagne cork. The only thing preventing a total disaster was this complex, purely mechanical locking system. So the whole system relied on these latches that would rotate into place. And then, and this is the crucial part, metal lock pens were supposed to slide in behind them, securing them. For the door to actually be safe, every single part of this had to work perfectly. The investigation uncovered the exact sequence of events on the ground in Detroit. A ramp agent was having trouble closing the door, so he applied some extra force, put his knee into it to get the handle to lock. And here's the flaw. The handle closed, but the locking pins didn't fully engage. And even worse, doing this was just enough to trick the indicator switch, so the warning light in the cockpit never turned on. And the NTSB's own testing confirmed this terrifying reality. By applying about 120 pounds of force, which, let's be honest, is easy for a baggage handler to do just by leaning on it, the handle could be forced shut. The very system that was designed for safety could literally be bent to create a false sense of security. The result was this deadly illusion of safety. To the ramp agent, the handle looked closed. In the cockpit, the instrument said the door was secure. But in reality, the latches were just barely holding on, waiting for the pressure from the climb to rip them open. You would think so, right? I mean, a brand new wide-body jet nearly crashes because of a really clear design flaw. The logical next step, obviously, would be a swift, mandatory fix for every plane. Well, what happened next really hinges on the difference between two key documents. You've got an Airworthiness Directive, or AD, which is a legally binding order from the FAA. It's the big hammer of aviation safety. And then you have a service bulletin, which is basically a non-mandatory recommendation from the manufacturer. It's a suggestion, not a command. And here's the fateful decision. The NTSB was pushing hard for a mandatory fix, but grounding the whole new DC-10 fleet would have been a financial and PR disaster for McDonnell Douglas, who were in this fierce battle for the market. So the head of the FAA and the president of the company's aircraft division made a gentleman's agreement. No big hammer, just a weak, non-mandatory service bulletin. This timeline, it just reveals the critical window of opportunity that was completely missed. A service bulletin was issued before the Flight 96 incident even happened. After the near crash, the NTSB publicly recommended a mandatory fix. But for nearly 2 years, as you can see, the fundamental flaw wasn't fixed on many DC-10s that were flying all over the world. And then came March 3rd, 1974. Turkish Airlines Flight 981 took off from Paris. It suffered the exact same failure as Flight 96. An improperly latched cargo door blew out, the cabin floor collapsed, and all the flight controls were severed. This time, there was no miracle. 346 people lost their lives. After that first incident, the NTSB had been crystal clear in its recommendations. 1. Redesign the locking system so it's physically impossible to close the handle unless the pins are fully engaged. 2. Add vents to the cabin floor to prevent a catastrophic collapse if decompression happens again. But those life-saving changes, they weren't legally required. That gentleman's agreement had won out over the NTSB's urgent warning. The result was the deadliest air disaster in history at the time, a disaster that was a near identical replay of an incident that everyone in the industry already knew all about. You know, in the end, the story of Flight 96 isn't just about a mechanical failure. It's about a systemic one. And it leaves us with this really stark question about corporate and regulatory responsibility, one that still echoes today. When a clear warning is issued, who has the power and the duty to make sure it's heard?